Dragon Age Origins is a shitty Lord of the Rings ripoff, and everyone should play it. The end. I hope you enjoyed this brief synopsis of Dragon Age Origins. What? That's the short version. They don't want to listen to me drone on and on about a game that came out over a decade ago.
And I didn't want to learn how to use this camera for a 20-second video. Keep talking.
Yes, sir.
Adawatch.
With the announcement of Dragon Age 4, I figured I'd take you back to where it all began. The year was 2002. Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings had debuted the year before to stunning success, grossing $47.2 million on its opening weekend alone. BioWare had just released their soon-to-be smash hit Neverwinter Nights, which was expected to do as well as their previous smash hit, Baldur's Gate 2. Fantasy video games were their bread and butter, and they were perfectly poised to cash in on the upsurge of interest in a fantasy title. Lacking the expensive Lord of the Rings license, they instead began work on their own fantasy world, which they called Dragon Age, because it sounds a lot like Lord of the Rings, but with way more dragons, and dragons are cool. And then their publisher, Atari, bled out from record losses to a tune of 500 million euros. The year was now 2003. George Lucas's Star Wars Attack of the Clones had just released a huge financial success, though less financial success than The Phantom Menace. BioWare, with their new partnership with Pandemic Studios, who was famous for Star Wars Battlefront, was perfectly placed to release their famously popular Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. This was released originally on Xbox, which was a notable departure from their PC game roots. Chasing that sweet, sweet Star Wars money, they began work on their own original science fiction setting, Mass Effect. Mass Effect was their most ambitious product to date, envisioned as the first part of a trilogy with over 20,000 lines of spoken dialogue. And then they were bought out by EA Games, and nothing would ever be the same again. Mass Effect released in 2007 to critical acclaim, selling over 1 million copies in the first 3 weeks. Suddenly, BioWare had the funds and attention to do whatever they wanted. And so, in 2008, they re-announced the Dragon Age title, now called Dragon Age Origins. It would be released on the PC just like the good old days of BioWare's roots, and would represent a sort of fresh start for the company that had always had its roots in fantasy. Like Tolkien's Middle-earth, Dragon Age's Thedas is a fantasy world loosely based on actual European history. So much so that lead designer James Olen gave lead writer David Gator a book on European history to draw from when designing the world. In Origins, you spend your time in the nation of Ferelden, which is based on medieval Britain, but with dogs. Lots of dogs. Their immediate neighbor to the west is the nation of Orlais, which is based on France, the Ponzi gets. Over all the nations hangs the shadow of the Tevinter Imperium, which is based on the declining Roman Empire, a former threat that's now more like an overfed corgi than a dread wolf. The writers really did their homework here, and it shows. The world is complex and immersive. You can easily get lost trying to read every single scroll and document to understand how it works. At the same time, the real beauty of the world building is that it's all optional. You can go the entire game without being force-fed backstory if you don't care about the world. We'll get into the deep lore of the series later, but for now, let's boot up the game. And so is the golden city blackened with each step you take in my hall. Marvel at perfection, for it is fleeting. You have brought sin to heaven and doom upon all the world. Neat! So right off the rip, we're told a few things. Number 1, mages equals hubris equals bad. The mages pulled your basic Icarus maneuver and flew too close to the sun. They tried to break into the literal heaven to meet literal God, and came back corrupted into darkspawn. Number 2, we're told that the dwarves were the first line of defense against the darkspawn. They crawled up from the depths of hell, the Underdark, the deep roads, and they ran right over the dwarves. It took a force called the Grey Wardens to stop them, and, spoiler alert, you're about to be a Grey Warden in a hot minute. So we know 2 things. Dwarves good, mages bad. Let's be a dwarf mage. Let's see here. We'll be a lady, human, elf, dwarf. Alright, then we pick a class. I can't be a mage? But, what? Okay, let's try elf. Elf mage. Yeah, that works. And I can be a human mage, just not a dwarf. Apparently, I can be a dwarf commoner or a dwarf noble, but not a mage. So this here on the character creation screen is your first taste of a mystery that niggles at the back of your mind the whole series. Dwarves don't dream, and dreams are connected to magic in a crucial way that you'll see in a minute. It's the attention to little details like this that really make the games what they are. So for this playthrough, at least the bulk of it, we're going to be an elf mage. Now, the game has multiple prologues according to your race and class. As you see here, human and elf mages share the same backstory, the mage origin. Human rogues or warriors get the human noble backstory, and non-mage elves can be Dalish or alienage elves, while dwarves can be nobles or commoners. Now, the game's giving me a character creation screen, so excuse me a moment while I customize the hell out of some BioWare faces until I find something I don't mind looking at for 100-odd hours of gameplay. There we go. That looks decent enough. Now, the default elf female is named Neria Serana, so we'll stick with that name. The default name does vary by race and gender, by the by. And with that, we're just about ready to start the game. The backgrounds are fairly diverse, giving you some taste of what life was like for your warden before he or she got, wardened. Could they have gone further with the concept? Of course. Does it feel cliche at times? Well, it was 2009. What do you expect? Thanks to the series making a serious effort to preserve your choices across games, with one notable exception, the closest thing to a canonical background is the human noble origin. The human noble is some name Cousland, Aiden or Alyssa by default, child of Taryn Bryce Cousland. Right away, you're introduced to the feudal system of Ferelden. You see, Ferelden is made of freeholds, which are something like the houses in the north in the Game of Thrones. Every freeholder swears to a ban, which is the ruler of a Banorn, or an Arl, the leader of an Arling, which is a Banorn but with a fortress instead of a big house. Bans swear to one of two Terrans in the kingdom, making the human noble's dad a big deal. Above the Terrans is the king, who rules only with consent of the bands. The bands meet every year in a lands meet, which is something like a senate. So much world building. Anyway, the current king, Kalen, is calling for people to come fight Darkspawn, and that means your daddy and older brother, since they're part of the militia. They're ready to march out when Arl Howe's men get here, but Howe's late and everyone's pissy about it. Meanwhile, Duncan, a Grey Warden, is looking for new recruits, and he's got his eye on your juicy ass. So you kill a bunch of giant rats and... Wait, is that a dog? You get a dog? Hang on, I want to redo Screwnaria. I want to do the one with the dog. No joke, I almost decided to cosplay the Mabari for this video. I mean, damn if Fereldans don't love their dogs, am I right?
Don't trust his knickers, man. It's a Mabari. He wouldn't have bit you if you weren't such an ass.
Anyway, you and the other pup kill a bunch of giant rats. Surprising no one, Arl Howe turns against your father, attacking the castle. You fight your way through the halls, killing Howe soldiers in search of your family, but it's too late. Everyone but your older brother and you are killed, and you're recruited for the Grey Wardens.
What is happening here pales in comparison to the evil now loose in this world. I came to your castle seeking a recruit.
Dude, read the room.
Pumpkin's just like that.
Ugh. So that's human politics. In dwarven politics, you begin in the city of Orzammar, the largest dwarf stronghold in Ferelden, or rather, under it, as dwarves live underground. This warden technically probably outranks the human, as they're the child of the king, second in line to the throne, and damn if this story isn't a lot sexier. Anyway, you're the child of the king, but not the only one. You have a younger brother and an older brother.
I'd advise you to watch that tongue, dear sibling. Father will not live forever. Come, Balin.
What a winning personality. So anyway, this asshole is plotting your death, just in case it jeopardizes his claim to the throne. You don't have time to deal with that shit, though. You have time to go spelunking, digging around in an abandoned taig, or dwarf city, looking for the lost shield of a paragon, or dwarf saint, and one of your ancestors. Slight twist, it's your younger brother that betrays you and the older brother both, so you're sent down to die in the deep roads, but thankfully Duncan's there lusting after your sweet, sweet beard, so off you pop to become a Grey Warden. On the other end of the scale, you can be a commoner, one of the underclass in Orzammar, a casteless dwarf, lowest of the low. Along with your sister Rika... Oh, hey, it's you! To survive, you've had to run errands for the Carta, which is like a dwarven mafia doing all sorts of unsavory things.
That's what everyone likes. A casteless with a big mouth.
Hot. One of the things you're asked to do is rig a fight in the Proving Grounds, the Dwarven Gladiator Arena. When you get there, the asshole's drunk off his ass, so what's a girl to do but put on the armor and fight the match itself?
But it's the taint you have to watch. That's what'll get you.
Hot. Thus ensures the least interesting gladiator battle of all time. Stand around smacking each other, occasionally throwing dirt in the other guy's eyes if you're a rogue. You're caught and sentenced to death for being poor in public, casteless, but for your fighting skills attract Duncan, who conscripts you for the Grey Wardens and drags you to the surface. If Arneria wasn't a mage, she'd have come from one of two places. The first is the Alienage, which is like a ghetto, but elven, in Denerim. It's your wedding day, which never means anything good in PC backstories, and sure enough, it spells doom for the double couple here as well. The Arl of Denerim's son Vaughn kidnaps the brides in a display of cartoonishly evil racism.
I'm having a party, and we're dreadfully short of female guests.
Which includes either you or your fiancé, depending on your gender. If you're male, you fight your way in to rescue her. If you're female, you fight your way out. Oh hey, doggos! When you reach the asshole who done kidnapped your woman, he offers you a deal. Leave without the women, and he'll pay you 40 whole gold, more than you've ever seen in your life. Unfortunately, the guards will confiscate it when you're arrested, unless you hide the gold, which means starting with this origin can get you 40 gold more over the course of any game than any other origin.
You monster.
You go home, with or without your women, and get arrested, whether you admit to the crimes or not. Luckily, old Tall and Pervy's here to get you out of a jam. He conscripts you and your fine, pointy ears for the Grey Wardens, and off you go, never to see your family again. The other possible backstory for Arneria is that of the Dalish elf. Elves are basically natives here. Ferelden once belonged to them, but now only a few small clans remain in the wilderness, living out their traditional lifestyles, but put a pin in that for later. While out doing your elfy thing, you come across a magical mirror, one that your clanmate Merrill takes a bit of interest in. Put a pin in Merrill, too. The mirror emits some kind of magic radiation, and now you're dying. So sad. But Duncan thinks he can save you, if you join the Grey Wardens.
It's like he's got a one-track mind or something.
Anyway, none of that happened to Arneria because she was a mage. Mages are hauled away from their families as children and imprisoned in circle towers where they're trained in the use of their magic. Neri is on her final exam, which she has to pass to become part of the circle and a full mage. Her harrowing will be overseen by the leader of the mages in this circle, First Enchanter Irving, and the leader of the Templars who guard the tower, Knight Commander Gregor. Also this cute blonde, Cullen. Put a pin in that, too. Now, I haven't mentioned the Templars before, but they'll come up more as the series goes on. Essentially, they're holy warriors, the militant arm of the Chantry, the overwhelmingly dominant religion in the area. These Knights for Girl Jesus are crusaders, meant to prevent the tragedy in the opening crawl from ever happening again, primarily via locking up all the mages before they can get up to trouble in the Black City. And to be fair, these mages get up to some scary shit. For your harrowing, you're sent into the Fade, which is where people's souls go when they're sleeping, and fight a literal demon. If you fail, the demon will possess your body and turn you into an abomination, and put a major pin in that for later. But you succeed, of course, and are inducted into the circle, and that's where it all goes wrong. Your dumbass friend Jowen has a plan. You see, they keep a bit of your blood in the basement to track you with if you escape. But your boy Jowen here is in love with a pretty forbidden girl named Lily, and he wants to pull a runner so they can go get married. And oh yeah, they think he's doing what's called blood magic, which is illegal. If they find that he is, they'll perform the Rite of Tranquility, which basically does a magic lobotomy so he can't feel anything, cast any magic, or care about anything ever again. So you set off on a series of side quests.
Then, of course, there are the libertarians.
Oh, God, no.
But eventually you get to the basement to steal the keys for his ankle tracker. You're all caught, and it turns out they're right. Jowen's a blood mage, and he and Lily escape. And oh yeah, Duncan conscripts you, just because.
He, likes your staff work.
Oh, my. How very forward of you, anonymous camera person.
Wow, somebody's thirsty today.
One way or another, you're dumped into the tutorial section of the game, Ostagar. Here we're introduced to your basic quest concept, asked to run a few errands for Duncan, as well as shown exploration of the landscape, in case you weren't an elf and thus were dumped into a city for your backstory. You're also introduced to King Kalen, who, spoiler alert, is basically identical to your first party member, Warden Alistair, the friendly, laid-back guy who loves a good fight and is too young to have any brains yet.
You do? Huh. That's a switch.
No, I'm a switch.
Sorry, what?
What?
Also, if you weren't a human, you get to meet your dog here.
Wait, does that mean the human noble existed, and then he died, and that's his dog? Dark.
Yeah, I guess all you actually do in character creation is pick where Duncan is at the start of the game.
And where his wandering eye lands.
You're sent to retrieve some treaties from the wilds, because something warden politics, but when you get to the spot they were at, they've already been stolen. This introduces you to two of the major series characters, Flemeth, the Witch of the Wilds, and Morrigan, her daughter. Flemeth is said to be a witch who conquered this whole area centuries ago, but it's also possible she's just a copycat witch, an old woman who was so disgusted by men that she ran off to raise her daughters in a lesbian commune in the swamp rather than deal with one more mansplainer.
Mood.
What?
What?
Anyway.
You retrieve the treaties, and you return just in time for your joining. You're the sole survivor of your joining, of course, because yada yada, prophecy, chosen one, whatever. Then it's time to see battle! Or, light the beacon to signal an ambush. Because you're a new recruit. You barely know how to use your warden powers yet. Kalen's forces lure out the Darkspawn, and Tyrion Loghain is meant to sneak around behind them and attack once they've been drawn out away from their supply lines. The beacon is swarming with Darkspawn, giving you a nice introduction to what passes for tactics in this game. Traps, dealing with waves of enemies, and terrain you can interact with. A brief aside to talk about combat in this game, it's not great. For the warrior and rogue, it mostly consists of pressing X once and letting the auto attack handle the rest. Not rapid pressing, don't make that mistake. And occasionally using one of your special abilities, like the rogue's trusty pocket sand. For a mage, you have a little more interesting gameplay, which is one of the many reasons mage is the best route. Mages get a basic attack as well, but also aimable single-target spells and AoE spells, meaning there's a little more tactical planning to do. Of course, if you want a given backstory that isn't mage, you can always main one of the party members, but it's a little odd to not be the hero most of the time.
The beacon is over here. You've surely missed the signal. Let's light it quickly before it's too late.
Our hero, everyone.
Mood.
What?
Mood.
You can't just mood everything. We just did that.
Mood.
Anyway, Loghain doesn't come when the beacons are lit, and you and Alistair are the only survivors thanks to your new pal, Flemeth. She begs you to take her daughter with you when you leave, just as all parents in fantasy stories, and you set out for Lothering. And here we come to one of the earliest flaws of this game. Sure, there's plenty of bugs.
Of what do I speak?
But the thing that almost turned me right off this game the first time I played was this.
Pretty as a painting.
Ah, so you have finally decided to rejoin us, have you? Falling on your blade in grief seemed like too much trouble, I take it.
Is my being upset so hard to understand? Have you never lost someone important to you? Just what would you do if your mother died?
Before or after I stopped laughing?
I will turn this party around, so help me.
So, not on Team Morgan Alistair.
What? How is that a ship? Is that really a ship?
Yeah, it's, well...
Never mind. I know everything's a ship on AO3 somewhere.
But Alistair and Morrigan loathe each other. I suppose it's a bit refreshing and makes them feel more realistic, but at the same time, nobody wants to listen to that all day, and as your first two party members, you pretty much have to. I ended up benching Morrigan for my entire first playthrough. I was a mage, so I didn't need her skills, and honestly, Alistair just lost everyone he ever knew in a horrible tragedy, so it seems a bit petty for her to pick on him. On a second playthrough, I can see why she does.
To look a gift horse in the mouth, but won't this add to our problems? Out of the wilds, she's an apostate.
If you do not wish help from us illegal mages, young man, perhaps I should have left you on that tower.
But since there's no way to tell her to step off shy of booting her forever, you pretty much have to avoid putting them in the same party together. Party dynamics are a huge part of this game. Not only do the party members chatter to each other while you're walking around, something that makes the game feel a bit more verisimilitudinous, but each party member has an approval rating, and they only care about things they see you do, for the most part. So you have to take your party members into account when you plan out your actions, lest you lose their approval. Anyway, you don't have to put up with them for too long. You get your dog, at long last, and you soon have the option to pick up 2 more party members. Leliana, a nun with some unusual skills, and Sten, a, member of the Kunari, a race of warriors who worship the Kun.
Kun. With Q.
That's what I said, the Kun.
No, Kun.
Kun.
Sounded the first time like coon.
I did not say Kun, that is offensive.
It is.
Sten is a Kunari, almost the only one you see in the entire game. They belong to a religion that insists that everything has a place and must stay in it, as opposed to the Chantry, which teaches that everything belongs to the Maker and should worship it, but otherwise don't much care if you're a Templar or a Chanter.
Unless it's the Chant of Light, no.
And so Rajmael in the heathen temple recanted. Speak only the word, sing only the chant. Then the golden city is thine, spoke Andraste. What?
Oh, you got him to speak. Ha!
What hath man's sin wrought?
Oh, he cheated.
Anyway, you discover here that Tyrion Loghain has seized power with the death of King Kaelin, and that you and Alistair are the only wardens left in Ferelden. And let's be clear here, only Ferelden is fucked. Orlais still has plenty of Grey Wardens. That confused the shit out of me the first time. This is also where you run into the last real tutorial bits of the game, the crafting systems. There are 2 separate systems here. Poisons and healing items, which you craft from gathering plants and other random bits from the ground, and weapons and armor enchantment.
Enchantment? Enchantment!
Which is done by this guy, Sandal. I didn't find poisons to be worth it, but you'll want plenty of healing items on hand until you've got a dedicated healer in your party, including these cute little dog biscuits for your faithful hound.
Hey, don't talk about Alistair that way. He tries.
What?
What?
What? So you gather your party, run some errands, and set forth with the first major fork in the plot. You need help from the mages at the Circle, the dwarves in Orzammar, the Dalish elves, and the Arl of Redcliffe. So basically, yes, all 4 backstory locations. So there is a best order here, but BioWare isn't actually going to tell you what it is. You see, the challenge tries to scale to your level, but there's only so much they can do. If they can only add so many more monsters, and really, after a certain point, scaling up... What? I tried to give them the short version at the beginning.
Details about lore, good. Boring things, bad.
Fine. Leave a comment if you want a whole video specifically about the gameplay and the challenge rating scaling. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the little bell. So that's all, folks. I'll see you next time.
Ahem. Get to the zombies.
I hate you.
I know.
Anyway, we'll go through in the recommended order, meaning we're following Alistair's suggestion to head to Redcliffe. But first, Alistair has news.
Well, because my father was King Marek.
Go on.
That's what I had to tell you. I thought you should know about it.
Oh. Okay, then. We continue on, and holy shit, is that decent facial expressions? Look at that! Ban Tegan has actual fucking facial expressions in 2008! Oh, yeah, and there's zombies.
Some call them the walking dead, decomposing corpses returning to life with a hunger for human flesh. They hit again the next night. Each night they come with greater numbers.
Before you can go all Plants vs. Zombies on their sorry asses, however...
Really? Plants vs. Zombies is the reference you're going to go for.
What can I say? I'm a filthy casual.
Sure, but like you could try something a little bit more hardcore zombie undead action.
Fine. Before you go all Evil Dead the Musical on their asses.
The musical. There's a musical? You went with the musical.
Yeah, of course. You've heard me singing it around the house.
I probably wouldn't know, though.
Oh, yeah, no, you know this one. It's the one that goes, die, 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 die.
Before you can go all Night of the Living Dead? Did they win in that one? Whatever. Before you can beat some zombie ass, you first have to convince the world's stupidest villagers to save their own lives.
Owen's the only blacksmith who can do it, but the stubborn fool refuses to even talk. If we're to be ready for tonight, we'll need that crotchety bastard's help.
It also doesn't help that I keep getting fucking lost in this village. How do I get there? Wait, that's not even the right quest marker. Where's the quest marker, you assholes? Anyway, you run around doing a bunch of side quests, you get the village support, you look at a guide and weep because part of the quest is broken on PC, so it's pointless to even do it, but you can't progress without doing that part, and then you're ready to fight some zombies.
They're coming!
Which is just like every other fight, but this time there's NPCs, and if you want the best rewards, you can't let any of them die. Once you've done that, you get dumped into another quest, which takes place in Redcliffe Castle. Except technically we're going to have a pause here once you've gotten the quest. Now, come with me on this journey here. The first bit of this whole thing is very realistic. If you go anywhere before Redcliffe, when you do get here, the whole village is wiped out by the time you arrive, because, you know, zombies. And if you show up, offer to help, then leave, the village gets wiped out while you're gone and you lose out as well. Furthermore, the NPCs say you have until sundown, and if you hang out long enough, the sun will set and the battle will begin, ready or not. Since this is probably the first place you go, given that Alistair explicitly suggests going here and the game's title card suggested as well, you might as well discover these little facts and decide that this is a game that cares about verisimilitude, so you'd best be careful not to abandon any quests. Which is why it's absolutely infuriating that the only way to get the best ending for Redcliffe Castle quest is to ignore the fact that people are begging for your help, run off and do the Circle Tower section, then come back. Sure, there's a vague hint about if you had multiple mages and a crate of lyrium, you'd have more options, sandwiched between more pleas to hurry up, but that's about it. When you set up the expectation that time limits imposed by the NPCs are also enforced by the game mechanics, you can't then ignore that expectation for the rest of the game. Unless you're Dragon Age Origins, I suppose. It's one of the reasons I suspect Redcliffe was written before they mothballed the project and the rest of the game after they pulled it back out from storage. And so we're off to the Circle Tower. Now this is where you really get into the meat of the Mage-Templar conflict, which plays a large part in games 2 and 3. Remember earlier when I said the Templars guard the mages in their tower? Well, that's guard as in prison guard, complete with orders to kill every last mage inside if something goes wrong.
The right of annulment gives Templars the authority to neutralize the Mage Circle. Completely.
And something, it seems, has gone very, very wrong. You persuade the Templars to let you inside to battle the demons and abominations. Just inside, you meet up with the mage survivors, led by an old woman named Wynne. She joins your party as your guide, and you head through the tower, killing demons left and right. You find what's left of the Templars, possessed and or charmed by desire demons, which, hello, nurse.
Happiness is bewitching. There is a certain power in all things mortals delight in.
You wind up in the Fade, which I'll touch more on later, and have to free your companions and fight your way back. When you get back, you find that cute blonde again, Cullen.
They are in the harrowing chamber. The sounds coming up from there. Oh, Maker.
We must hurry. They are in grave danger, I am sure of it.
You can't save them! You don't know what they've become.
Cullen demands that you murder everyone in the harrowing chamber to stop them from becoming abominations. If you agree, you'll have to go through Wynne, who is otherwise recruitable as a companion. You can refuse outright or stall to see what's going on before you make your decision, with varying approval and disapproval ratings either way.
This, unlike the time limit, is actually a recurring theme throughout the rest of the game and, in fact, the series. You have to be careful who you bring with you and what you do in front of them, or else they could get pissed off, leave the party, die, or otherwise never be recruited.
In fact, this very conflict is a recurring theme in the Dragon Age universe. The Chantry specifically says that magic is meant to serve man and not be his master. And in Ferelden and Orlais, they took that to mean mages should serve non-mages. Magic, or the potential for it, seems to be an innate quality some people have. You can't get rid of it without killing them or making them tranquil. So for the safety of everyone, mages are gathered in towers like the one Arneria grew up in. It's the Templars who guard them, and who, it's implied, hunt them down if they escape, and potentially even find them in the first place to bring them to the tower. But there's hints here and there that the Templars also abuse their charges and possibly even rape them, depending on which circle you're in. This ties into a recurring theme in the games that man is fallible no matter what he does to try to put himself above corruption. Backed here by the supposedly pure Templars falling prey to their own desires just as mages are meant to, while it's mages that are standing against the blood magic and demons to fight back. Those that are familiar with the temptation and expected to succumb easily are actually the ones that know how to fight back and resist, while the ones who fancy themselves immune fall all the more easily. Anyway, the Warden fights the Abomination, a pride demon that's taken over one of the mages, and either saves the other mages or doesn't. If you didn't side with Cullen, you're able to recruit Wynne. You're given your first of what turns into a traditional choice. Do you side with mages or Templars? If you side with the Templars, they'll purge the mages, leaving them able to pledge their services to the Grey Wardens. If you side with the mages, they stay alive, able to pledge their help to your cause instead. We're not monsters here, so we side with the mages and get our butts back to Redcliffe to handle the Redcliffe Castle. We head inside the secret passage and... oh look, it's Jowan again. So that's where he went.
I was instructed to by Terran Loghain. I was told that Arl Aemon was a threat to Ferelden, that if I dealt with him, Loghain would settle matters with the Circle. All I wanted was to be able to return.
We have some options here. We can kill him, we can set him free, or we can try to make him help us. Or we can leave him in his cell to rot. No matter what you pick, you're going to piss someone off, which is the case with a lot of these moral decisions. You try to do the right thing, and half your party disapproves no matter what. In this case, killing the filthy apostate pisses off Morrigan, the filthy apostate. Freeing the literal blood mage pisses off Alistair, Sten, and Leliana, unless you press gang him into fixing what he broke, which impresses Leliana, though Alistair still disapproves. You fight your way through the castle, optionally stopping to save one of the serving girls whose father you ran into during the first half of this quest, and get to the family. It seems Connor is possessed by a desire demon, which is the monster that's been reanimating corpses and sending them to attack the village. Bantegan is now possessed, but once you free him, you have options on how to resolve things. You can kill the kid and the demon with him. If you spared Jowan earlier, he'll also offer to do a ritual to get the demon out of the kid and into the Fade where it can be killed. Of course, he's a blood mage, so this ritual involves human sacrifice. Isolde offers to die for her son, which leaves you with the choice of which party mage will go into the Fade to defeat the demon. Now, this is why we went and did Broken Circle first. If the circle is freed, you can ask the senior mages there for a safer, less human sacrificey version of the ritual. You still end up sending a mage to the Fade, but this way Isolde doesn't have to be killed.
Only you can prevent dead parent syndrome.
So back we go into the Fade once again. If it seems like we're going into the Fade a lot, keep in mind that's because of the choices I've made to show you more of this game. You can easily kill Connor and not end up going here, just like you can pick any non-mage background and not end up in the Fade during your backstory, so the only mandatory Fade section is during Broken Circle. They need you to see the Fade at least once, and I kinda like how cool it looks. This game really takes advantage of the medium and lets you feel like your choices matter. For all that I sometimes get annoyed at not being able to use the dialogue options I want, I only get annoyed because of how often your choices do matter. In a game with no options at all, it feels less restrictive that I can't do the things I want than a game that has plenty of options but none that I like. Here, for example, you can be a total scumbag. In addition to doing Jowen's blood magic ritual, you can deal with the demon in the Fade, allowing it to return to Cotter later in exchange for sex, money, or the love of your companions, which actually improves your approval rating with everyone. So that's something. You could also ask for power, and this is the only place in the game you can unlock the Blood Mage specialty. Blood magic spells cost hit points instead of mana, and one of them even draws hit points from your allies to heal yourself, just like blood magic is shown to do in the game. Of course, if you do any of these things, when you get back to camp, you get an earful from Alistair.
You let Lady Isolde sacrifice herself! With blood magic! How could you do that? We could have gone to the Circle of Magi. We could have tried harder. We should have tried something that didn't involve blood magic. That's for sure.
Most of your approval or disapproval choices are plus or minus 1 or maybe 5, but here you can lose 41 points with Alistair all in one go. This video is getting a bit long, so I hope you'll join us for part 2 when we finish out our plot analysis and start discussing the themes behind the game. Hope to see you soon.